This is the beginning of Cosmic Fire Webinar Commentaries 14B, and we're on page 1231, and we have just been dealing with a great map of Parabrahm, a being, not Parabrahman, not Brahman, but a being with a certain number of constellations in it and a certain number of stars and a certain scope, which is certainly a subgalactic scope. I wonder how far we'd have to go before we reached the galactic level on some of these maps. Anyway, we know, we're told, is that on page 1084 of Between This and Cosmic Fire, I'll go there, and this is it, giving something of the great scope, millions and millions, 10 million kalpas pass and twice 10 million Brahmic cycles, and yet 1 hour of cosmic time is not completed. And here is the term, when the wheels of the fourth dimension, of which our sun is one, and all that is of lesser force and higher number, such as the 8th and 9th degrees, turn upon themselves. Here it is. Within the wheel, forming that wheel, are all the lesser wheels from the 1st to the 10th dimension, and we're talking about the one great wheel. Within the one great wheel are all the lesser wheels from the 1st to the 10th dimension. That's the big hint about the primacy of the number 10 and how many dimensions there may be in the entirety of our cosmos. Well, if they say moving right along, oh my, moving right along, we pass that chart. All that it would be possible for us to do in this section will be to impart the truth in 3 ways. Okay, let's see what he means by that. And let's try to make this just a little bit smaller. Okay. And this, there we are. Impart the truth in 3 ways. Through the illumination of the student's mind as he studies the stanzas of Dzyan, which will be found at the commencement of the treatise, and we're going to go over that. I spent some time with a class once, and those that teaching does exist, and I think it may be even up on the Makara site, maybe. But there, it was in the class context, and there's not as much focused attention step by step as may be possible here. So, but they still can be accessed. Anyway, will be found at the commencement of the treatise, the stanzas of Dzyan, and I have maybe 200 pages on that, which we will review at some point here. Secondly, through the realization that will come to the students as he correlates and ponders upon the various occult fragments scattered through the pages, primarily centering his attention upon the following words. So here we have those. It's the study of the stanzas of Dzyan. And here we have the study of the fragments. And this is, I have 100 pages on this one alone, because there are different ways of interpreting it. And maybe I'll just have to wait until I get into them, because they are part of the stanzas of Dzyan, and I'd like to discuss it in a better, more reasonable and consistent manner than will be possible now. The secret of the fire lies hid in the 2nd letter of the sacred word, the U of the AUM, right? The mystery of life is concealed within the heart, and here, especially in our solar system, in which our electric fire can be considered as buddhi. So at the heart of every atom is this central fire of buddhi. When the lower point vibrates, when the sacred triangle glows, when the point, the middle center, and the apex connect and circulate the fire, just speaking in very general terms, because I've given about 4 different scenarios of what this could be like, and it's all written out, and I think I'll have to get it onto Makara. We've got here the circulation from the monad through the soul and into the personality in the microcosmic sense. And we can look at those 3 levels in relation to any being. When the lower point vibrates, when the sacred triangle glows, which certainly can be considered the spiritual triad, when the point, the middle center, that's the soul generally, and the apex, we can consider that the monad, or we can consider it the top of the triadal triangle, which represents the monad, connects and circulates the fire. But anyway, the general idea is that spirit, soul, and body are circulating the fire. When the threefold apex likewise burns. Yeah, you see, we have to bring in the idea that there may be a kind of higher correspondence to the causal body on the atmic plane. So the apex of that triangle may be on the atmic level, that threefold body. When the threefold apex lightwise burns, then the true triangles, the greater and lesser, in a certain sense, the spiritual triad, and then the lower, its lower correspondence, merge into one flame, and the flame is the monad, which burneth up the whole. And it doesn't say that the monad itself burns. The monad is flame. So I have yet another interpretation here. One which considers the destruction of the higher correspondence to the causal body as found in the atmic vehicle. Well, in any case, I will return to this when we take the stanzas of Jian which are found in the beginning of the Cosmic Fire book. As I said, I paid a lot of attention to them, only realizing, of course, that one is scratching the surface. Basically, what DK did, I think, is that he studied many of these occult fragments and these stanzas, and that the whole of Cosmic Fire is really an expansion of these stanzas of Jian, or at least as much of he could, of much of them as he could give them. So it's the secret of the solar fire, really, lies hidden in the sacred letter of the sacred word, second letter of the sacred word, which is connected with the monadic plane in this case. The mystery of life is concealed within the heart, and it's there that the solar heart is found, at least according to my present theory. I mean, we're dealing with several things, you know. Second aspect of the monad, and the letter U, for universe, right? The letter U, and we're also dealing with, in general, the heart, the etheric heart center. No, there wouldn't be there. Etheric heart center of the solar logos on the second level of the monadic plane. And we're dealing with the lower point, which is probably the point of the entire personality. It is the point representing the entire personality. It could be considered the mental unit, or it could be considered simply the apex of the personality triangle. When the lower point vibrates, when the sacred triangle glows, and that is the sacred triangle here considered as the spiritual triad, one way of looking at it. There are so many, as the spiritual triad. When the point, the middle center, this represents the soul, and the apex, apex of the spiritual triad, connect and circulate the fire, or possibly the monad, or possibly the monad. Connect and circulate the fire when the threefold apex likewise burns. Well, let's see, the apex of the triad, of the spiritual triad, is threefold, but so is the monad. Then the two triangles, the greater and the lesser, one of them, the lesser, built upon the lower point, and the greater we have been discussing, merge into the flame, which burneth up the whole. It's like, it's as if we are preparing for the way of higher evolution by destroying our contact with the lower 5 worlds of human and superhuman evolution. And the flame, really the monad, is an aspect of the flame. Of course, it's also possible, one higher interpretation is that the vehicle of the monad is destroyed, and the volatile essence is released into the sea of fire. Well, I've tried to be systematic about this in the earlier writings. Speculative necessarily. One has to come up with options, I think, about what these things can mean. We cannot concretely say at our stage of evolution it definitely means this, because some of the words used here are abstract and can refer to different levels of relationship. I mean, from one point of view, can simply refer to the destruction of the causal body and the jewel in the lotus, on one level. On one level. I think that's a good abbreviation, don't you? Okay, on one level. Okay. Right. So, excuse me. On one level, we have the fiery conflagration of the causal body. And we can probably interpret in these terms. On another level, another abbreviation. On another level, we have the possibility that the apex, the threefold apex of the atmic atmic causal body is destroyed with all the 5 levels of evolution on the 5 lower planes. And on I guess I'm getting carried away here. Don't you think so? On yet another level, all right. We have the possibility of the destruction of the monadic vehicle and the liberation of the volatile essence into the sea of fire, the logoic plane of the cosmic physical plane. So that, in a way summarizes some of the things that I was looking at in the more detailed version here. It's hard to settle on one. One would like to, in some very confident way, settle on one. But the two triangles, greater and lesser, merge into one flame. You see, we can't have, if it's about the destruction of the causal body, it's not going to be the spiritual triad and the lower personality merging. Because before that would happen and a true six-pointed star would be created, which would be the return to the monadic state, the causal body would have long been destroyed. Suffice it to say that an area of containment is destroyed and liberation follows. Area of containment is destroyed and liberation follows. Ultimately, liberation is always essentially liberation of being. It's true that you can liberate the consciousness and so forth, but ultimately we're looking for the true release, the true moksha, the true slipping of being away from its area of confinement, and of course it will take consciousness with it. All right, so we'll get to that when I review the stanzas of Xian as found in the beginning of the book. Okay, so where are we here? We've been looking at what? We've been saying that we'll be studying the stanzas of Xian. We're supposed to study on the occult fragments, and our major centering is centering on the following words, which have to do with destruction by the second aspect. By the way, I want to say this important thing, that the destruction of the causal body is essentially undertaken by the second aspect of the will, or by a greater love that cannot be contained in the causal body. Okay, so that was the second one, to ponder this particular fragment as representative maybe of all the fragments. And then thirdly, through a consideration of the various charts and word pictures which will be found also scattered through the treatise. The student of the new era will approach much that he has to master through the medium of the eye, learning thereby to appreciate and solve that which is presented to him in the forms of lines and diagrams. All is symbol, and these symbols must be mastered. Well, we've been doing quite a bit of that. I have discussed chart number 5 with many people, and you'd be amazed at how many different interpretations there are of this chart. These charts are layered charts, and you think they're just talking about one thing, but there's so much that is implicate in each chart. So many different levels are implied in the structure of the chart. I mean, you look at the chart, and it says here, the causal body of a solar logos. It could be ours, and it's probable in a way that DK means us to consider it that, but it's not necessarily so. It could be any one of the solar logoi in the local system, local 7 solar systems. Here's a human monad and these 7 planetary logoi. Well, That's in our solar system, presumably, but it could also be in another solar system. The three logoi, presumably, are the three persons of the logoic trinity. So, although it seems to be specific, and it's said to be evolution of a solar logos, in the evolution of it, there's much more implied, or even represented, than just our particular solar logos. The fact that it's been put here in the color indigo is suitable for our solar logos, and for other solar logoi it might not necessarily be so, because their color and their quality would be other than that. Well, anyway, so Master DK is suggesting, what's he saying here? He's saying, study the stanzas, realize what the second stanza has to offer. So let's put these all down, right? He's saying, here we go. Study the stanzas. Study particularly the first stanza, the secret of fire. Read the secret of fire, and study the charts, tabulations, and diagrams, which are symbols. And we have to learn through the eye, to see many things simultaneously and in relation to each other. When you hear, you can do less of that. Oftentimes we hear things in sequence. It's more Saturnian. Sometimes, if we can attune ourselves properly, we can hear great notes, as in music, and we can discriminate the different parts. But generally, when we listen, we are not differentiating so much. Or if we differentiate just between a few things. When you see, you can see many things simultaneously, so sight suggests synthesis. Even the roundness of our eye suggests the possibility of seeing all at once, or of synthesizing. When you think about the eye of the grasshopper, it's fragmented, and of course that is symbolic of the consciousness of many of us before we've started to learn how to put things together, or put things back together, as they originally were, when the, let's just say, the influence of Isis begins to impinge upon us, whether it's the planet Isis, or Sirius considered as Isis, we begin to see synthetically. It must also be borne in mind that students who approach the subject of spirit, I guess the editor is making it really big, need to grasp the following facts. See, what is spirit? Well, monad is a particular, isn't it? And we can say the spirit, and we can mean the monad, but when we talk about the word spirit, we mean all of the aspects, the highest aspect of divinity in general, of which all monads, or particular emanations of the one monad, are a part. So spirit is a much bigger subject in a way than the human monad, although the human monad is what gives entree into the realm of spirit. And really there are, monadically speaking, no many spirits. There's only one in extension. So, what do we have to bear in mind? What must we bear in mind? Whilst in manifestation, number one, and therefore during the period of an entire solar system, because that is the manifestation considered as the manifestation of the solar logos, it is not possible for the highest Daihan Chohan, to think in terms of the negation of the organized substance and the non-existent form of form. Well, does he mean only does he mean the solar system as the etheric physical body of the solar logos, or as more? The Dayan Shohan, even the planetary logos can be considered the Dayan Shohan, and certainly the solar angels are. So does he mean lives which are as high as a planetary logos? And what is meant by non-form? Are the cosmic astral plane and cosmic mental plane considered to be in the realm of form? Because certainly a planetary logos could think in terms of his own causal body, which is in the realm of form for the cosmic logos, or super cosmic logos. So what do we mean by the non-existence of form? Do we mean thinking onto the cosmic astral plane, or do we mean even beyond? Do we mean that the true formless worlds are those of the super cosmic ethers? Do we mean that? Let's see what he says. The goal of realization for man is consciousness of the nature of the soul. That is, of his own nature on nature. Right. On the systemic higher mental plane. Okay, SMIC. Systemic. No. Systemic higher mental plane. Yes, we have it. Of his own nature on the systemic higher mental plane, the medium through which the spirit aspect ever works. So that's our goal. That's the realization of man, and of course we're speculating into realms beyond that. There's a big difference, and I'm sure you will agree with me. There is a big difference let's see, difference between speculation and realization. Through the medium through which the spirit aspect ever works. Right. More it is not possible for him to do. Having learned to function as a soul detached from the three worlds, man then becomes a conscious, corporate, active part of that soul, which permeates and pervades all that is in manifestation. In other words, he realizes himself as the one soul and works from that perspective. Then and only then, the pure light of spirit per se, I mean there's the mediated light of spirit, there is always the mediated or qualified light of spirit. So then and only then the pure light of spirit per se. There's so much hidden in that word per se, because we get intimations of the spirit without realizing the spirit per se. And I think I'll write that down. We receive intimations of the spirit without realizing the spirit per se. So it's all a question of the clarity and purity and intensity of the realization of spirit. It doesn't come in its purest form at first. So then and only then, the pure light of spirit per se becomes visible to him through a just appreciation of the jewel. A just appreciation of the jewel hidden at the heart of his whole being, because it is an extension of the monad. It is an extension of the monad. It's even in a way, well, it's an extension of the monad. Let's say that. The monad is a jewel in the crown, and this is a reflection and extension, but this is not the same thing as the realization of the jewel of the monad, let's just say of the monad, on its own plane. No. Then only does he become aware of that greater jewel, which lies hidden at the heart of solar manifestation. Well, well, well. If the word manifestation is used, do we mean on the cosmic etheric planes, such as the second cosmic etheric plane? Okay. Well, let's see. So there's going to be a jewel in the lotus. There's going to be a jewel in the heart of every chakra, of every solar chakra. Or do we mean the jewel in the lotus at the heart of the solar logoic egoic lotus? Probably not. Seems a little bit high. Because the word manifestation is used, so if we think about where the monad is, the monad is located in a way within the solar logoic heart center on the monadic plane, if that is where it is. As I've tried to explain the reasons why I think that is where it is. Okay, so even at that high level, let's see what further he says here. Then only, see, we have to go through certain things in terms of soul realization. It's very simple in a way that soul realization precedes monadic realization, obviously. But we sometimes forget it. You know, it's what the Christ said, symbolizing the approach for us, no man cometh to the Father except through me. So we have to realize what is the all-pervading soul, the one soul, before the Spirit really dawns upon us. Then and only then the pure light of Spirit per se becomes visible to him through a just appreciation of the jewel at the heart of his own being, a balanced appreciation. It's not excuse me, an all-inclusive appreciation, because the jewel is really the monad in extension, but it is the beginning of the appreciation of spirit. So we could say that appreciation of the jewel is the beginning of the realization of spirit. Then and only then does he become aware of that greater jewel, seven-faceted, just like the seven monadic groups, at the heart of the solar manifestation. If the greater jewel is seven-faceted, it suggests the seven monadic types and their treading of the way of higher evolution. Even then, at that advanced stage, all he can be aware of, can contact and visualize, is the light which emanates from the jewel and the radiance which veils its inner glory. Well, even as the monadic, as the solar logoic, etheric heart center, this would be a fantastic radiation. You think that if the solar logos himself cannot yet be aware of the radiation of his own jewel in the lotus, how can man? So it has to be a lesser jewel. Okay, jewel. So why say that the solar logos cannot be aware of his own jewel? Jewel in the lotus. Well, look at man. When do we become aware? At what stage of evolution? And how evolved is the solar logos? Well, the solar logos is not yet an initiate of the third degree. And only at the fourth degree, by analogy with man, is the jewel in the lotus fully revealed. As a matter of fact, we can say that before the third degree, there's not going to be much revelation of it at all. At the third degree, the third synthesis petal parts enough, along with the other two, to reveal the glory of the jewel. The glory of the jewel is the glory of the monad in extension. Of the human, jewel in the lotus is the glory of the monad in extension. I'd like to make that an abbreviation, the MIE. It's already there. I've done that long ago. So, the monad in extension. Let me just have the pleasure of actually writing it. There it is. So, from the third degree on, we are beginning to see, feel, experience, realize the monad in extension with the revelation of the jewel. But what about the solar logos? He's not yet an initiate of the third degree. He's not, certainly not, therefore, an initiate of the fourth degree with a fuller revelation. So, he's not going to see that, whatever sight means on his own high level. We human beings have an analogy here. So if the solar logos cannot really grasp his monad in extension as his jewel in the lotus, how can we? But maybe as we begin, well, here's a way of thinking of it. As we begin to see our own monad in extension, we are actually seeing something of the revelation of the jewel in the heart center, in the etheric heart center of the solar logos. So what we can see is really coming from his etheric heart center, and somehow we're tuning in at that level. Maybe, at that level, another abbreviation, at that level. Okay. At that level, we are tuning in with the head centers of the planetary logos and with the heart center of the solar logos. At least that's what I've come to think, due to the fact that the planetary logo have such a strong expression on the monadic plane, and it seems to be connected with their head centers. I haven't quite worked out yet, solar logos, logoic plane, planetary logos, monadic plane, and that, of course, is not exclusive. They each have something on the other plane. But if you're looking for the solar logoic head center, here's the question. Maybe if you are looking for the solar logoic head centers, look to the logoic plane. But do you have to look to the monadic plane for the planetary logoic head centers? Or can you look to a lower level of the logoic plane for the planetary logoic head centers? And I'm glad I put that in, because that really would be important. As I've said, if Sanat Kumara, who is, and if Shambhala is a major planetary head center, if Sanat Kumara is focused on the logoic plane, must we look to the monadic plane for head centers? Or do we find the heart centers of both of these beings, solar logoic and planetary logoic, on the monadic plane, but on different subplanes of it? And do we find the head centers of both of these beings, solar logoic and planetary logoic, on the logoic plane, but on different subplanes of the logoic plane? I think, okay, there is something reasonable here in this assumption. Hypothesis. Something reasonable about this hypothesis, that the subplanes of the logoic and monadic planes will have the focus, will be involved in the focus of greater and lesser beings. With the, I know it's just kind of transferring it into a more minute level, but maybe it makes sense, and maybe I've said differently in the past, talking about the head centers of the planetary logos on the monadic plane, but maybe the logoic plane is ripe for head centers. See, take a look. There's an analogy here. We have an analogy. The causal body of the solar logos is on the cosmic higher mental plane. The causal body of the planetary logoi are also on the cosmic higher mental plane, but they are on different subplanes of the cosmic higher mental plane, different subplanes. That being the case, maybe we can do the same thing. Yeah, but of course there's a problem there. And that problem is that sometimes DK says that the chakras of the planetary logos are on the Buddhic plane. Well, all I can say is what is hidden there? If there's an analogy from man to the planetary logos and from man to the solar logos, man has his higher chakras on the higher subplanes of the systemic etheric plane. So maybe there is, you see, if we, I'll just give you an example. If we look at this map, here's man's higher chakras. Let's just look etherically. Okay. Higher chakras on the higher subplanes of the ethers. Now, what if we went all the way up here And we said, well, there's something similar going on here with the solar logos. So his head centers, let's say, will be on the divine plane, but maybe on this sublevel 1. And then his ajna would be here, maybe on sublevel 2, and maybe his alta major on sublevel 3. But maybe we go to the planetary logos and we find something different. We find that his highest head center is on the divine plane, all right, but on sublevel 2. Maybe his ajna is on sublevel 3, and maybe his alta major is on sublevel 4, like that. Then we come over here to the heart center. Remember what's happening here. The heart center for a man is on the physical plane. Okay, etheric physical, sublevel 2, the subatomic level. That's man. Well, for man, for the planetary logos and the solar logos, let's say that the monadic plane is like sublevel 2. But maybe the solar logos has his heart center on the atomic subplane of the greater sublevel 2, and the planetary logos has his heart center on the subatomic plane of sublevel 2, and maybe other beings. Generally, when there's chakras, I think the chakras are going to be located on the higher 4 subplanes, but and not on the lower 3, because you can split any plane, such as this monadic plane, into a 4 above and 3 below, etheric and denser. So I think you see what I mean as to the possibility here, and that is to me, maybe a new idea. Maybe it's not entirely a new idea, but newish idea. That the solar logos and planetary logos do have their chakras on the same plane, on the same systemic plane. And I want to say higher chakras here, of the same systemic plane, like logoic, monadic, and atmic. No. Okay, it'd be easier to just spell it, wouldn't it? But the subplane on that systemic plane would be different for each. Same chakra, same systemic plane, but different subplanes. And, later we can even do that with man. If we go back down here, and this I have mentioned before, I know. Well, if you have head centers, they're very likely found on the atomic subplane of the etheric plane. But ajna would be higher than, the highest head center would be on the first subplane, the ajna center on the second, and the alta major on the third subplane. So these are subplanes now, of which there are, 343. I guess that God, our planetary logos, or solar logos, can find the right place for a particular vortex, and we can preserve the ray line resonance by putting those head centers on the correspondence to the logoic plane, the atomic plane, and still finding a way to differentiate among them according to their ray line. Head center 1, ajna in a sense 2, and alta major 3. Anyway, I have not developed that idea so much before this moment, and I think there's something to it. My problem, of course, is that I work at different levels of ignorance as I do this. And on some of the earlier presentations, I may say one thing, and then the thought evolves. And by the time I get to a program much further down the line, I've changed my thought because more information has come in. I actually am looking for a way, to make all these programs accessible to a person so that they know what subjects are taken up in what places and can simply, if possible, move their slider to that particular time, place in time on a DVD where a program is likely to appear. I'd like them to be able to do that, so that the different things that I say, which are not necessarily in order, but are at least clustered around a certain subject, will be more easily retrievable. We'll see whether that becomes possible. I would like it to be possible because then these programs will have greater utility. There are people of great courage who are listening to all these programs, one after another, but still suppose they want to do research, and get together the many possibly contradictory things I've said about the same subject. They would know where to go and how to do it quickly. So that lies ahead as a possibility. At least I know that what I've done, in part, is promote the extension of thought speculatively into areas which cannot be ascertained but at least can be entertained. Oh, that's a good point, I think. While the speculations, let's put it like that way, lead into areas of thought which cannot be ascertained, but can be entertained. That much can be done. The seer has then become pure vision. This is the seer, in other words, the subject-object difference is eliminated. It is not the seer and the seen, but both are one. The seer and the seeing are one. He perceives, but as yet cannot comprehend, but as yet comprehends not the nature of that which is perceived, and it remains, but at least he sees. The seer has then become pure vision. It's a bit like contemplation, is a bit like contemplation. The meditator becomes the meditating. He perceives, and he doesn't think of himself as meditating. That self is lost sight of in the meditation. The sense of self is lost to sight in the meditation. He perceives, yes, but as yet comprehends not the nature of that which is perceived, and it remains for another solar system and another kalpa. And the implication here, this is the Maha Kalpa, to reveal to him the meaning of that revelation. The source of that illumination, well, we're talking about spirit now, aren't we? Spirit, well, I'll just call it spirit monad. Of that illumination and the essence of that life whose quality is known to him already by its vibratory rate, heat, and life. In other words, we can understand the quality of essences which we do not yet understand. the source of that illumination, the essence of that life, whose quality is known to him already by its vibratory rate. So first, we contact quality, and only then the life of which quality is the expression. All right. Needless it is, therefore, for us to study and consider that which the initiate of high degree can only sense. Yeah, it's so true. So true. Occasionally, one of those wild, far-flung speculations does land the fish of understanding. But in general, we have to put our attention towards what is the next step, our next step. But I want to say this, that there are times when gathering a greater vision is itself the next step. So, if you understand what I mean, sometimes gaining a greater vision is itself the next step. And that's what I'm trying to offer in these commentaries, a greater vision for myself, transferred to you as directly as I can. And that greater vision, while not giving complete comprehension, at least gives us greater sense of the whole in which we are all involved, and changes our attitude towards the whole and towards each other. And it works out in practical behavior. It makes it practical. Needless it is, therefore, for us to study and consider that which the initiate of high degree can only sense. Useless it is. Sometimes I think he speaks, a little bit here in this older language, like Yoda, another guru, much shorter and more green, speaks. Useless it is for us to seek for terms to express that which lies safely hidden behind all ideas and all thought. How interesting to consider the being behind ideas. Well, ideas are said to be beings themselves, but they are, emanations of greater beings. Ideas emanate from ideas. Well, let's put it this way. Ideas emanate from ideas. So useless it is, at least our limitations are being defined for us, to seek for terms to express that which lies safely hidden behind all ideas and all thought, when thought itself is not perfectly understood, and when the machinery for comprehension is not perfected. Even thought, we first must understand certain thoughts before the ideas, and certain ideas before that which lies behind them. We must understand thought before certain ideas, and certain ideas before that which lies behind them. Man himself, a great idea and a specific one, knows not the nature of that which he is seeking to express. This is wonderful. Man has a great idea, but there are greater ideas of which he, the idea, is the emanation. Fascinating. We're thinking in completely different terms, aren't we? All we can do is to apprehend the fact that there exists that which may not as yet be defined. And we can say, even the one about whom. To realize that a central life persists which permeates and animates the soul, and which seeks to utilize the form through which the soul expresses itself. This can be stated to be true of all forms, of all souls, human, subhuman, planetary, and solar. So, we appreciate that there is a that for each type of atom. but we are more focused on the qualitative level through which any that expresses itself. Oh my. Well, we made it to page 1223. What do you know about that? And as a result, we can stop. But let's see first what we're stopping, what we're no longer doing. Trouble is, okay, so it must be born. Students must approach the whole subject of spirit. Okay, so we'll say here, facts to be grasped in approaching the subject of spirit. And we can say here that this is the, right here is the end, end of the first fact to be grasped when approaching the subject of spirit. So now we have then the end of Cosmic Fire Webinar Commentary number 14B, page 1232, and we're going to begin with Cosmic Fire Webinar Commentary 15A on page 1230. Page 1232. Okay, friends, we're really in pretty deep here. We have to have that intimation of what spirit really is, that irreducible essence, which usually manifests as some kind of power, which we interpret as the name spirit. But pure being is all of the things. It's power, love, and intelligence, and all of their attributes. So we sometimes identify spirit with the will, but will is really the first expression of spirit. All right, well, that'll be enough for that for right now, and we'll come back and do more of these facts which have to be grasped when approaching this subject of spirit. Okay, we'll see you soon.